Chapter 11: A small disaster every 3 years and a big disaster every 10 years. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What's the matter? As early as Chen Mo walked this way, Wang Lixia had already noticed him. Senior, I have a merciless request, and I may need to trouble you. His words were extremely polite. However, the other party pulled his face and said coldly, since it is an unkind invitation, then don't say it. Although his words were cold, Chen Mo didn't sound like he was completely refusing, so he hurriedly continued, Senior, I will leave the rain distribution work in your spiritual field to me this year. How about that? Wang Lixia frowned slightly. If we say 3 months last year, it was for borrowing big uphill, but what will the other party do this time after experiencing a good harvest? What are you planning this time? Chen Mo clasped his hands in fists and said, Firstly, I want to repay you for your kindness in protecting the road last time. Secondly, I hope you can escort me again. Is this it? Wang Lixia was a little surprised. His stooped body couldn't even help but straighten up. My parents taught me that a drop of kindness must be repaid by a spring, let alone a life-saving kindness. Do you know the consequences of doing this? It's just that my realm is a bit stagnant. Without you, I'm afraid I would be the same as fellow Taoist Yin from the south. Wang Lixia was slightly stunned and looked thousands of meters away. He didn't come back either. Chen Mo nodded. Judging from the other party's tone, it seems that Yin Zheng is not the only one who suffered an accident. Has Fengshe recruited a new spiritual cultivator? I think there seems to be a monk on the second level of qi refining next door. The Lingtian is only so big, and there are only so many Lingshufu around. Wang Lixia naturally knew everything. I haven't heard about it yet. Chen Mo looked back and said. The other party stared at it for a moment and said slowly, however, that monk has already rented 6 acres of spiritual land, and he probably won't take over that piece of land again. She muttered to herself, it seems that Ling Jifu will be recruited again. Chen Mo didn't answer the other party's words. He didn't plan to tell the other party that he wanted to take over Yin Zheng's land, although Wang Lixia will definitely know when the seeds enter the ground and the spiritual rain begins to fall. Now is not the time to tell her. Senior, I made an appointment with Fengshe to buy some seeds. Come find me tomorrow at Chinche. Before Chen Mo had a chance to finish his words, Wang Lixia issued an eviction order in disguise. The food selling season has passed, and according to her experience, it is almost impossible to have a calamity repair, but since the other party asked, she would go with him. After all, if you don't sell food, it's just a matter of one day. Early the next morning, Chen Mo stood guard by the wooden house early. When the hour came, the waning figure of Fengzhu appeared on time. Wang Lixia walked slowly on crutches. This time, Chen Mo, who didn't need to push the cart, walked side by side on the left side of the opponent. On the way, he kept saying, Senior, how long have you been a Lingzifu? At first, Wang Lixia just snorted and glared, unnerved by the junior's nagging, but following the other person's rapid-fire words, she finally spoke. What? You want to find out some secrets from me? Chen Mo shook his head repeatedly. No, distant relatives are not as good as close neighbors, just chatting and chatting. He doesn't have much purpose either. Of course, I would be happy to ask some questions. Under the bombardment of Chen Mo's words, Wang Lixia finally took the initiative to speak. Lingzifu, how is your practice of flame palm? Have you started? As soon as he finished speaking, Chen Mo's hands fired like 2 balls of blazing fire, and this hand directly caused Wang Lixia to stop and stare at his hands, silent for a long time. After a long while, he finally said, the state of proficiency. That day when I saw you using flame palm, I felt envious, so I have been practicing hard every day for more than 2 months. Stupid. Wang Lixia scolded her, and then she looked embarrassed again. That's it, that's all. Then haven't you been practicing in recent days? Chen Mo nodded apologetically. He would not say that he was not only proficient in flame palm, but also gained 15 points of experience in nourishing qi art. Why? Wang Lixia shook her head with a wry smile and fell silent for a moment. Senior, do you think it is more important to improve your realm? Chen Mo asked. Yes and no. Senior, please clarify. As far as I know, Guchenfang City. No, it should be said that this Ling Jifu at the foot of Xian Peak Mountain, the highest level is only the 4th level of qi refining. Wang Lixia slowly explained, do you know the reason? Insufficient resources. It's quite clever. A good harvest year like last year is rare. Xian Peak suffers from a small disaster every 3 years and a major disaster every 10 years. When she mentioned disaster, Wang Lixia's old face showed a smile. Playful with an angry expression, however, it was fleeting. What's the trouble? A minor disaster every 3 years refers to drought, and a major disaster every 10 years refers to insect plague. Insect plague? Chen Mo can understand the drought, it just means more watering, but what is an insect plague? It is true that there are insects in the spiritual field, but it will not cause a disaster. Realm is very important, and spells are also very important. If you have spare money. Wang Lixia stopped talking. Spare money? How could he have any spare money? What happened to the spare money? Faced with further questioning, she still said it. You can buy a Ginjin 1 finger with spare money. Compared with the flame palm, it is more effective in killing insects. Ginjin 1 finger. The last time he went to the market, Chen Mo paid special attention to it, however, he was not well off, so he did not consider it. Senior, since Ginjin 1 finger is better, why does the market give the spiritual plant husband the flame palm? Chen Mo was a little puzzled. Heh. Wang Lixia sneered, do you think they are all good people? After saying this, the other party stopped talking. For the rest of the way, Chen Mo kept trying to figure out the meaning of the other party's words. Gradually, a terrible idea emerged. Near noon, the two arrived at the Guchen market. Unlike the bustle of the last time, the market was much quieter at this moment. The spiritual plant husbands returned to their fields one after another, and the number of casual cultivators coming and going naturally decreased. Wang Lixia waited at the entrance of the market, and Chen Mo came to the Niu family shop alone. The guard at the door stopped him, and after a lot of effort, he informed Wei Wuwei in the shop. The other party came out and was surprised when he saw him. Didn't we agree to come and get the seeds next month? Chen Mo clasped his hands and said, Boss Wei, the spiritual plant farmer next to me hasn't appeared for more than 2 months. It's time to turn the soil now. I'm afraid that if I don't take action, the land will be barren. Which cultivator next door? Wei Wuwei frowned. Although he had control over the spiritual fields in the market, it was impossible for him to know every spiritual plant farmer clearly. Therefore, sometimes there would be situations where the spiritual plant farmer disappeared and the spiritual fields were barren. Yinzheng. He should have rented 2 acres. Wei Wuwei thought and said to himself, thank you, Brother Chen, for reminding me. It seems that I have to find a new spiritual plant husband. At this time, Chen Mo stepped forward and said frankly. Boss Wei, I wonder if I can rent that piece of spiritual land. You. Wei Wuwei looked at him in surprise. Chapter 12, Planting Seeds, A New Year Begins. You are listening at novelfull.audio. You. Wei Wuwei looked at him in surprise. He obviously didn't expect that a person who was only at the first level of qi refining and had been a spiritual husband for only a year would actually ask to contract 5 acres of spiritual land. Boss Wei, I thought about it. If I can acquire these 2 acres of land, I can earn an additional 200 kilograms of spiritual rice next year, which will be very beneficial to my future practice. Chen Mo talked eloquently, his tone and eyes were full of innocence. Regarding the Lingtian disaster, he did not mention it at all, and pretended to be completely ignorant of it. Wei Wuwei didn't answer in a hurry. He thought for a while and said, just wait, I'll be back as soon as I can. Now, less than a month is left before planting, therefore, unless there is a ready-made spiritual cultivator to contract the 2 acres of spiritual land, it will be too late to cultivate it again. The steward of Niujia's shop made a brief report and received very clear instructions. As long as someone is willing to rent the spiritual field, then let it be rented. Don't mention the small disaster in 3 years and the big disaster in 10 years. Anyway, if you can't pay the food, the other party will end up being bought into the black mine. Naturally, Wei Wuwei would not disobey the manager. After receiving the order, he returned to the courtyard again and came to Chen Mo. At this moment, this young man, who had just entered the world of immortality for less than a year, was curiously looking at the plants and trees in the yard, just like a young man who was inexperienced in the world. Wei Wuwei sighed inwardly. The bumper harvest in the first year made this person misjudge the risks of planting. I don't know if it is good or bad for the other party. Boss Wei. How are you? Chen Mo had noticed him a long time ago and pretended not to know before the other party approached. The steward agreed, but only for the seeds of these 2 acres of land. Wei Wuwei was also afraid that he would not be able to take back his original ways. Boss Wei, how about I exchange it for 3 big pills? Chen Mo suggested. He also has more than 50 kilograms of spiritual rice hidden in his home. If you save it, it will be enough for him to eat for 3 months. Before winter, he can replenish the big pill after the next batch of grain is sold. Then you. Wei Wuwei said as he realized that the other party really only needed 9 big pills. If everything goes well, if you sell the grain before winter, you will have a chance to exchange it for big pills. The premise is that there is surplus food. Good. Chen Mo took out the 3 big pills he had prepared long ago from his pocket and handed them over. The other party accepted it without any hesitation, and within a moment, he came out from the shop carrying another bag of Linghuang rice seeds. The seeds have also been cultivated. Since you are here, I will give them to you first. They are 1 pound and 6 taels in total, which is enough to sow 5 acres of land. Also, remember to put them in a dry and cool place after you go back. Don't let them get damp. Understood, thank you. Chen Mo took the Linghuang rice with both hands and weighed it gently. The weight was correct. After opening it and observing it carefully, he found that it was no different from the seeds in his memory. It's like spiritual rice, but different. The seeds are plump and I don't know how they were cultivated. If you know it, you can save a lot of money. Of course, this is Fengsher's exclusive formula, and it will definitely not be known to low-level spiritual cultivators like them. Boss Wei. Thank you very much. I'll take my leave then. That when Chen Mo said goodbye, the other party would naturally not try to keep him. He is just a spiritual husband, and cannot attract Wei Wuwei's attention at all. All he cares about is how much food the other party can give him in the coming year. Arriving at the gate of Fengsher, Wang Lixia, who was a little tired, leaned lightly on the painted red threshold. His eyes were slightly closed, looking a little tired. The sudden visual impact made Chen Mo feel like he was seeing the village head's grandma who was waiting for him after school for a moment, old and peaceful. It turns out that she is really old. Chen Mo seemed to have forgotten that this 3rd-level qi refining monk who was the most powerful in the area was already very old, but even so, in order to make a living, he is still busy with his face facing the lus and his back turned to the sky. Why? He sighed softly. So what? Regarding his arrival, Wang Lixia slowly opened her eyes. Senior, let me carry you back. Chen Mo suddenly said, just take a few steps less if you can make the old man take less steps. Unexpectedly, as soon as these words came out, Wang Lixia's brows instantly stood up and she shouted angrily, no need. I'm not dead yet. After that, he took the lead and walked out on crutches. Chen Mo scratched his head in embarrassment and followed quickly. The entire journey was silent. Back at his cabin, Chen Mo stored the seeds in a cool place. He continued to start his cultivation career, but this time, there was another task during the day. Plowing the ground, the soil in the Lingtian is hard, so for monks, it can be considered a laborious task. After spending 3 days plowing the first 3 acres, Chen Mo helped Wang Lixia plow her land without even saying hello. This kind of work does not consume spiritual energy, but purely consumes physical strength. It is also a benefit to sell the other party a favor. As for Wang Lixia, she just acquiesced to his behavior. All 10 acres of spiritual land have been plowed, and it's finally time to sow. The cool spring breeze blows on your face, giving people a pleasant feeling of comfort. The weeds in the spiritual field have not yet sprouted, and the area is bare and not decorated with life. The Lingzifis in Guchenfang city began to get busy. Those who buy seeds, and those who sow seed sow. During this period, Wang Lixia also went to the market. On this day, Chen Mo chose a sunny morning. He buried the Linghuang rice seeds that had been stored for half a month in the Lingtian, turned over the soil, and covered them. After doing all this, he looked in the direction of Wang Lixia, and seeing that she didn't show up, he pinched his fingers and cast the rain spell. The spiritual rain lasted for half an hour until the 5 acres of spiritual fields became wet. When the seeds are planted, don't water them too much for the first time, otherwise they will drown. This is common sense. After doing all this, Chen Mo opened the panel and started the New Year's practice. Name, Chen Mo. Occupation, spiritual plant husband, unlocked, spiritual cultivator, unlocked. Lifespan, 2976. Cultivation, Qi refining level 1. Skill, cultivating Qi Ju, 64/100. Spells. Rain spell, skilled 22/200. Flame palm, skilled 46/200. Talent, increased production. Green, the occupation is still the spiritual plant husband, and the spiritual cultivator is still not unlocked. Chen Mo speculated that maybe he had to raise 1 or 2 chickens before this occupation could be lit up. Of course, he doesn't want to waste his energy on raising chickens and ducks now. That kind of investment with a long cycle and high returns is not suitable for him for the time being. His realm is still the first level of Qi refining, but the experience of Yangqi Ju has reached 64 points. According to the current cultivation speed, by the first half of next year, he will be able to break through the second level of Qi refining. The spiritual rain just now added 2 points of experience to the rainmaking technique. After watering Wang Lixia's 5 acres, he can get a total of 4 to 5 points of experience. If he calculates it based on the average frequency of once every 3 days, he can master this spell in 4 months, and then the increased production talent can also be successfully broken through. Of course, the fastest improvement this winter is Flame Palm. Chapter 13, The Efficacy of Magical Rice. Please collect and recommend. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Senior, I'm here to make rain for you. Chen Mo knocked on the door as usual, and started making rain without waiting for the other party to agree. Wang Lixia didn't go out until the end, when the seeds were just planted, because the spiritual rice seeds had not yet sprouted. They did not need too much rain. In the first month, it usually took 5 to 7 days to rain. In this way, the spiritual energy consumed by making rain was not much, and it was completely enough to rely on natural recovery. About a month later, Chen Mo only saw Wang Lixia once. I don't know if it was an illusion, he just felt that the other party seemed reluctant to go out, and someone had helped her water and take care of the spiritual fields, and she only showed up once every 10 days or half a month. March, the seeds of the spiritual yellow rice finally sprouted and broke through the soil, and dots of green dotted the thousands of acres of spiritual fields at the foot of Xian Peak. The seeds began to sprout, and weeds gradually began to grow. Unlike ordinary weeds in the mortal world, the weeds watered by spiritual rain and nourished by spiritual veins have stronger roots and grow more vigorously. If the weeds are not cleaned up in time when they just sprout, once they grow up, they can't be removed at that time. Not only that, as the weeds grow, the stems of the spiritual yellow rice will be difficult to grow, not to mention the ears and fruits. Therefore, in the 4 or 5 months of spring and summer, in addition to watering, it is also extremely important to eradicate the weeds that have just emerged at any time. Chen Mo went down to the field, wrapped 2 fingers with flames, and gently inserted them into the soil, pulling up the weeds at the root. Even if he used spiritual energy, he felt a little resistance. It can be seen how deep the roots of this grass are. It took nearly an hour to clean up nearly an acre of land. Because the weeds are always growing, it is impossible to remove them all at once. You can only do a little bit every day, until summer is over and autumn comes. The key is to grasp the rhythm of weeding. In the second month, Chen Mo, who was taking care of 10 acres of spiritual fields at the same time, finally felt unprecedented pressure. Not only did he have to spend an hour weeding every day, but because the spiritual rice had also entered a crazy growth stage, the frequency of watering also increased from once every 4 to 5 days to once every 2 days. Often, even if the spiritual energy in his body was consumed, it was not enough to complete the watering of 10 acres of fields. Therefore, Chen Mo had to start consuming a large amount of spiritual sand to quickly replenish the spiritual energy that could not keep up. For half a month, Chen Mo was so busy that he was exhausted. Except for the rainmaking technique that was constantly gaining experience, he had almost no action on the chi-nourishing technique and the flame palm. It was only April and spring, and the 20 taels of spiritual sand he had obtained had been consumed, leaving only 8 taels. At this rate, these spiritual sands may not survive the summer, not to mention the next 6 months. That evening, Chen Mo, who was a little tired, had just returned to his cabin and lay down when there was a knock on the door. "Who is it?" No words, just 2 coughs, but with these 2 coughs, Chen Mo immediately recognized who was outside the door, Wang Lixia. This cultivator who he had dealt with more frequently in the past half-year, perhaps, he could also be considered a half-friend. "Wait a minute." Chen Mo hurriedly got up and opened the door. In an instant, a strong fragrance came to his nose. He looked down and saw a bowl of hot rice porridge in Wang Lixia's withered hands. The fragrance came from here. Not only that, there was even a trace of spiritual energy in the fragrance. "Senior, this is what you have." "Some broken rice left over from last year." He took it, and before he could thank him, the other party put one hand behind his back, leaned on a cane with the other hand, and staggered away. Chen Mo looked at the other party's back and was a little speechless for a moment. A meal rewarded by a rich man is not as good as a bowl of porridge saved by a suffering brother. He looked at the other party quietly, wanting to see him off. Suddenly, Wang Lixia turned around and said in a scolding tone, "Why don't you eat it while it's hot?" Oh. Chen Mo picked up the bowl and drank the steaming spiritual rice porridge. As soon as it went down his stomach, a warm current filled his body. It was completely different from the medicinal power of the bigu pill. It was a kind of comfort that increased the sense of fullness while nourishing the meridians and nourishing the dantian. Soon, the depleted dantian spiritual energy began to accumulate. After about a cup of tea, the originally dry dantian became full in an instant. A bowl of porridge is only 1 or 2 rice at most, but it has such a powerful effect. Chen Mo was surprised. He estimated that 100 bowls of porridge might not be as much as the amount of spiritual energy contained in 1 or 2 spiritual sands. It would be very luxurious to practice by eating all the time, but the recovery effect brought by this spiritual food is completely incomparable to spiritual sands. No wonder, those cultivators from families and sects would buy a lot of spiritual rice. This is only the worst first-grade spiritual yellow rice. If it is other spiritual food, the effect is simply unimaginable. A bowl of porridge can restore spiritual energy for a day, which means that he can completely restore spiritual energy through spiritual rice, and then rely on spiritual sand to practice. There are still 50 kilograms of spiritual rice, which should be 30 kilograms after polishing. Chen Mo estimated that if he calculated it at a rate of 1 kilogram every 10 days, 30 kilograms could be eaten for a full 300 days. In this way, the remaining 8 taels of spiritual sand can be used for practice. Of course, if that's the case, a bowl of porridge a day can't provide him with physical consumption, which means that the remaining 50 kilograms of spiritual rice can't be counted as daily consumption, and he still has 3 bigu pills left, and there are still 6 months before winter. Does it mean that I have to borrow 3 more? For a moment, Chen Mo was in trouble, but there are still 3 months, and it's not time to rush. With his spiritual energy restored, Chen Mo practiced the flame palm several times in the house. The experience bar that had stagnated for half a month finally increased by 2 points to 82 points. If we don't consider the next 3 months, according to the current progress, this spell will reach the level of mastery before autumn. In Wang Lixia's words, it means that the flame can leave the body and attack the enemy. Another month passed. With the help of spiritual rice, Chen Mo's practice speed has increased a few points. The Yangqi Ju increased by 3 points at the rate of 1 point every 5 days, and the flame palm broke through to 180 points, and even the rain art reached 150 points. Weeding, watering, meditation, and cultivation were carried out in an orderly manner. On this day, Chen Mo came to Wang Lixia's field as usual, but to his surprise, he saw a neighbor who often met but never greeted. Xiao Changhua. Why is he here? This is the spiritual plant husband to the north of Chen Mo's spiritual field. He entered the Tao through martial arts. Last year, he was at the 2nd level of qi refining. It is still unknown whether he has broken through to the 3rd level. Originally, the two were standing at the head of the field, seemingly discussing something, but when he saw Chen Mo approaching, Changhua shut up instantly and stared at him with unfriendly eyes. Chapter 14, Wang Lixia's Road of No Return. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chen Mo stopped about 50 meters away from the two of them. He looked at the muscular and cheeky Changhua from a distance and frowned slightly. Curiosity killed the cat. He is not very interested in knowing other people's secrets. Just as he was about to turn around and leave, Wang Lixia over there coughed twice and said, "Come here too." "Me? Past?" Chen Mo asked back. "You should also come and listen and see if you are interested." As soon as he said this, Changhua looked at Wang Lixia in surprise. "Are you going to let him participate in this matter? Whether he goes or not is his business." Chen Mo approached slowly. This time, the black-faced monk on the second level of Qi refining who had entered Taoism through martial arts no longer looked like a cat with fried hair, wary of him. "Please say it again." Wang Lixia spoke slowly. In Chen Mo's eyes, the old man was getting older. Changhua hesitated for a moment, and finally said, "This is what happened. There is a mine between Xian Peak and Huangyun Peak. After years of digging, a lot of spiritual stones and spiritual sand were obtained. I heard that about a year ago, the cave of the ancient immortals was dug there." After saying this, Chen Mo suddenly lost interest. What kind of paradise? Does it have anything to do with him? How can one expect to get any benefit from a person who is at the first level of Qi refining? Seeing that he was a little distracted, Changhua sneered in his heart and continued, "However, there seems to be a ban on that cave heaven paradise, and only monks in the early stage of Qi refining can enter. So you plan to ask Senior to go with you?" Chen Mo said. "That's right. The Qingyang sect has semi-disclosed this secret. As long as they can help them get the magic weapon and elixir in the cave heaven paradise, they can successfully join the Qingyang sect. And it is also the main peak." Changhua said. "Fellow Taoist Chen, what do you think?" Wang Lixia, who had been silent until now, suddenly asked. "Me?" Chen Mo was a little surprised. After thinking for a moment, he said, "It's been nearly a year since the cave heaven paradise was discovered." "That's right. No one managed to get the treasure inside for a year." "Right. Is it dangerous? Will anyone die?" "It is said that due to being buried underground for a long time and having to be nourished by spiritual veins, a lot of evil spirits are nourished there." Changhua smiled contemptuously. If it were simple and no risks were needed, would Qingyang sect announce this news? Then why do you think you can do it? When did I say I was going? Changhua asked with a straight face. Then you. Chen Mo suddenly turned to look at Wang Lixia, and instantly figured out everything. That's right. Since the Qingyang sect released this news, they naturally wanted to recruit a large number of casual cultivators from Fengshe to serve as cannon fodder. Of course, you can only enter at the early stage of Qi refining, so naturally the third level of Qi refining has the greatest chance of success. Although Wang Lixia doesn't know how long it will be before she declines, looking at her current appearance, it may be difficult to improve. In this case, taking a risk before death is indeed a reasonable choice. Senior. Do you think I should go? Wang Lixia asked. Listen to what fellow Taoist Xiao said, I'm afraid this will be a life-and-death situation. Chen Mo said solemnly, if the other party never comes back, he may not have anything to rely on when selling grain again at the end of the year. Wang Lixia looked at the two people opposite her, then raised her eyes to look at the mountains in the distance. She supported her stooped body with the crutches in her hands, and a confused look appeared on her face with crisscrossed wrinkles. Neither Chen Mo nor Changhua spoke at this moment. They all know that no one else can make decisions for her. After a long while, Wang Lixia finally focused her eyes and said, Go back first and let me think for 2 days. Okay. Farewell. Changhua also brought the message. Chen Mo did not leave in a hurry, but came to the field aside to spread rain for the spiritual field. If the other party really chooses to take risks, it shouldn't be a desperate fight, then this spiritual field can only be left to him to take care of. I don't know if it's a burden or luck. After some clouds and rain, Chen Mo returned home. Early the next morning, there was a faint knock on the door. Opening the door, the person who came was none other than Wang Lixia. Before Chen Mo could speak, the other party turned around and said, "Follow me." The two of them came to Wang Lixia's cabin one after the other. "Wait here." The other party went back to the house to mind his own business. After a while, he came out carrying a sack. "This is 200 kilograms of spiritual rice. It is the grain I have saved over the years." While talking, he took out a cloth bag and a porcelain bottle from his pocket. "There are 8 big pills and 30 taels of spiritual sand here. You can take them first." Chen Mo's eyes widened. He couldn't believe that these things would be given to him. This was a huge fortune for a casual cultivator. "These things will be kept with you temporarily. If I can come back alive within 3 months, you will have to return them all." Wang Lixia looked serious. "Good," Chen Mo nodded seriously. "If you die." When he said this, the other party's eyes darkened obviously. "Then you can help me take care of the spiritual field." "Senior. You are afraid of bad luck if you go here. You don't have to go at all." Compared with these resources, Chen Mo actually didn't want the other party to leave. Although there is a lot of spiritual sand and rice, he can harvest these things as long as he is given 3 years. However, 3 years is not enough for him to reach the 3rd level of qi refining. "I've made up my mind." Wang Lixia shook her head and returned to her indifferent tone. "Only she knows her situation best. If you don't take a chance, you will only have 1 year to live at most. Instead of staying in the spiritual field and dying quietly, it is better to take the last chance." "Senior, then I will help you take care of your 5 acres of spiritual land to help you triumph," Chen Mo said, holding his fists. Wang Lixia tapped her crutch lightly and said, "You have to be careful about that monk yesterday. I think he is not far away from breaking through the 3rd level of qi refining. I don't seem to have any contact with him, right?" Chen Mo was a little confused. "Those 2 acres of spiritual land." Chen Mo's heart skipped a beat. Is it possible that the other party also wants to lease those 2 acres of land? "Thank you, senior." Having a coveted neighbor is not good news. Wang Lixia gave a kind reminder, turned around and went back to the house, muttering, "Next year, who will own this spiritual field? The decision is made to die." She should also know that this trip will lead to death, but she still embarks on this road of no return. This is the sorrow and helplessness of the low-level monks. Chen Mo stuffed away the big pills and spiritual sand that the other party had temporarily stored with him, picked up a bag of spiritual rice on the ground, and returned to his home. Near noon, he looked at Wang Lixia from a distance and limped out of sight while leaning on a cane. "As for whether you can come back." Chen Mo held the spiritual sand in his hand and began to meditate and cultivate immortality. Chapter 15, Flame Palm Breakthrough, Evil Spirits at Night, and Shadows of Insect Plague. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Call. After a lot of punches and kicks, Chen Mo stopped. The weather has entered autumn, and the wooden house that should have been exposed to the autumn cold is filled with a heat wave. At this moment, his hands were still red, and the originally delicate palms were now covered with calluses. This is a trace of cultivation and a symbol of strength. Although Wang Lixia's temporary resources with Chen Mo have not been used, he has no worries at all. In the past half a month, the spiritual porridge and spiritual sand have not stopped, and I can consume them as much as I want without having to count the resources in detail. It feels really good. No wonder, in previous lives, those who showed off their wealth would say, "You cannot experience the happiness of having money." Chen Mo opened the panel, and now Flame Palm has broken through proficiency and reached the level of mastery. He pushed open the door, facing the dim night, and struck out with all his strength. I saw a blazing fire spurting out and hitting the open space 7 or 8 meters away. Although this palm is not as good as the one Wang Lixia used to repel Xiao, it is still 2 or 3 points more powerful at this moment. Now when fighting against others, her ability to protect herself is even stronger. The fire gradually dissipated, and Chen Mo looked up at the night sky. The sky is clear and the stars are bright. after traveling for more than a year, he always remembered the warning not to go out at night. This was the first time he saw the starry sky in this world, quiet and beautiful, the cool autumn breeze blows, and the Lingwang rice in the Lingtian has begun to ear, the wind rustled, accompanied by bursts of fragrance. This year should be another bumper year. Chen Mo was very lucky. There were no droughts or disasters for 2 consecutive years. Just as he was enjoying the refreshing feeling of the breeze blowing on his face, the rice fields not far away suddenly fell down piece by piece, and then a black shadow flashed over like a ghost. Chen Mo held his breath, quickly retreated into the wooden house, and closed the door without hesitation. Boom! 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 There was a heavy slamming on the door. At this moment, a bright red light suddenly lit up from under his feet and spread to the entire room with lightning speed. There was only a pop sound, followed by a scream. After a few breaths, there was no movement outside the door. What? Chen Mo was still frightened at this moment, regardless of the opponent's attack power and ghostly speed. Just the speed of not having enough time to react will easily tear open his skin if you get close. What evil spirits are there around Guchenfang City? Originally, Chen Mo thought it was just word of mouth. Out of his vigilant personality, he did not put himself in danger. Every day when it gets dark, I naturally return to the cabin. Today is also a coincidence. It just so happens that the flame palm breaks through and can be released outside the body. He was afraid of damaging the few pieces of furniture in the room, so he decided to try it outside. But who would have thought that just by counting the breaths, he would be targeted by an unknown monster? Fortunately, he was cautious by nature, so he just stood at the door. Otherwise, it will be too late. You can't go out. It seems you can't go out. Chen Mo thought to himself, turned around and went back to bed to rest. Early the next morning, it was just dawn. He opened the door, and a charred footprint suddenly appeared outside the door. Looking at the door again, there were 2 more charred holes in the upper middle. Obviously, this is what the uninvited guest left last night. Until now, Chen Mo was still a little scared. I secretly made up my mind to be more careful when doing things in the future. When he came to Lingtian, Chen Mo noticed that several ears of rice in his field had also turned yellow. It seemed that they were also made by that ghost. What a waste of natural resources. Just these few places are enough for him to eat for at least 2 or 3 days. Annoyance turned into annoyance, and soon he continued to be busy again. After autumn, there are basically no weeds in the ground. I just water it every 3 days and don't need to do anything. After all the spiritual energy in the body is used up, the rain-spreading technique still has 10 experience points left to upgrade. Chen Mo returned to the cabin and cooked himself a bowl of rice. He used at least half a kilogram of spiritual rice. He had a delicious meal and soothed his heart that was hurt last night. If Wang Lixia saw this scene, she would definitely hit Chen Mo on the head with her crutch. While knocking, he would yell, "Prodigal, prodigal. Hey, it's been almost half a month, and there's no news at all." After eating a bowl of rice, Chen Mo instantly became lively. He came to the ground, holding 1 or 2 ounces of spiritual sand in his left hand and 1 or 2 ounces of spiritual sand in his right hand, and began to practice. He had already made up his mind as early as 5 days ago. You can keep the spiritual rice and Bigu pill first. If Wang Lixia comes back in 3 months, then return them all to her, but not Ling Xiao. When he was not sure whether the other party could come back, or even had a high probability of not coming back, his first priority was to improve his strength as soon as possible. Now, Chen Mo only has 2 taels of spiritual sand that he redeemed last year, and his qi nourishing technique has reached 78 points. There are still 22 points left. Based on the rate of 1 point of experience in 5 days and 1 tael of spiritual sand in 10 days, he will need at least 110 days and 11 taels of spiritual sand. There are still less than 2 months until the spiritual rice matures, and it will take nearly 4 months for him to break through to the second level of qi refining. Therefore, after confirming that he would have the resources to repay this year, Chen Mo decided to use the spiritual sand left by Wang Lixia first, and wait until he breaks through to the second level of qi refining. Breathe in and out. Time flies. While he was concentrating on practicing, a rustling sound suddenly reached Chen Mo's ears. He opened his eyes and felt something was wrong. He stood up and walked towards the direction of the sound. Soon, he saw an insect as big as 2 of his palms on the spiritual rice that was half a man tall. Aphids. Chen Mo has never seen it, but he has heard of it. It is said that this thing eats spiritual rice and flies so fast that it is impossible to stop it. Without saying a word, he used his flame palm and swatted at the aphid. The power of mastery realm spells should not be underestimated, and he swatted the insect into flaming bone mud with just one glance, but the next second, Chen Mo was dumbfounded. The bug was beaten to death, but the two spiritual rice plants in front of him were also burnt. At this moment, he realized why Lisa Wang wanted him to learn the golden finger if he had the chance. He didn't encounter any bugs last year, so he didn't care. It seems that this technique, which is specially used to kill insects, must be learned. After dealing with the aphids, Chen Mo searched the 10 acres of spiritual fields for a while. After consuming 40% of his spiritual energy, he successfully killed 7 insects and 12 spiritual rice plants. Flame palm is really not suitable for killing insects. At this moment, if Wang Lixia was still here, Chen Mo would definitely tell her about the insects in the fields and listen to her opinions. Of course, if the other party is really there, the moment you see an aphid, your face will definitely become very ugly. Although these insects can't make a difference, it also means, in the coming year, I'm afraid there will be an insect disaster. Chapter 16, Production increased by 50, the ownership of Wang Lixia's spiritual field. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 16 50% increase in production. Wang Lixia's spiritual field belongs to her. The aphid incident was just an episode. It did not cause much trouble, nor did it cause panic among the spiritual planters. After all, it was normal for such a large spiritual field to have a few insects, and no one would associate these weak insects with the terrible insect plague, perhaps, except for Wang Lixia, who had been here for decades and had seen through the Qingyang sect, taking care of the spiritual field and cultivating immortals were very boring. Facing the same spiritual field all year round was really annoying, but fortunately Chen Mo liked to play games in his previous life. He did the same thing over and over again for more than a year, and he didn't feel too much discomfort. As time went by, the spiritual yellow rice in the spiritual field was tasseled day by day, and the grains were getting bigger and bigger, but Wang Lixia never returned. Chen Mo knew that the other party might have died in that cave paradise. Knowing that there is no chance of survival, he still insisted on doing it. Perhaps, this is the sorrow of the lower-level cultivators. As the raindrops fell bit by bit, the last acre of spiritual field became moist. Crystal-clear water drops hung on the plants that were more than half a person tall, shining brightly in the morning sun. The clouds and rain in the sky began to dissipate. When the last drop of rain fell, 2 bright yellow words flashed before Chen Mo's eyes: Rain Spreading Technique +2. Rain Spreading Technique Upgrade. He stood in the spiritual field, and with a thought, he opened the panel. Name, Chen Mo. Occupation, spiritual plant husband, unlocked. Spiritual cultivator, unlocked. Lifespan, 29 out of 76. Cultivation, first level of qi refining. Skill, cultivating qi ju, 81/100. Spells. Raining technique, mastery 1/400. Flame palm, mastery 33 out of 400. Talent, increased production, blue. Raining technique lived up to expectations and finally broke through the proficiency and reached the mastery level. Like the flame palm, the experience required doubled, and the difficulty of cultivation also doubled instantly. However, this is all worth it for Chen Mo. His eyes were focused on his only talent. Increase production. Blue absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth into the art of cloud and rain to increase the production of spiritual plants. This talent can be integrated into the art of rain and other arts, and the production of spiritual fields will increase by 50%. It has been integrated with the art of rain. You can choose whether to integrate it when casting. When this method is upgraded, the talent is also upgraded. The increased production directly increased from 20% to 50%. This means that 300 kilograms of spiritual rice can be harvested per acre of spiritual fields. 180 kilograms of which are his own. The harvest this year alone is enough for him to earn 90 taels of spiritual sand. From the situation on this day last year when he had to borrow the fasting pills, to now being able to harvest nearly 100 taels of spiritual sand a year, this is unimaginable for any spiritual plant husband. Even for cultivators at the third level of qi refining like Wang Lixia and Xiao Changhua, in a good year, they can only get 400 kilograms at most. Obviously, as he plants more and more fields, the harvest he will get will be higher and higher. Just when Chen Mo was happy, a thought suddenly popped up. Wang Lixia can't come back, what about the spiritual rice in her field? At this time, a bold idea emerged. The spiritual plant husband died, and the corresponding spiritual field naturally belonged to management. Logically speaking, these spiritual rice should not grow, let alone pay a cent of grain. Seeing that the 5 acres of land were about to mature, it would be a pity to let it go to waste. However, with Chen Mo's current strength, it is impossible to harvest the 5 acres of spiritual fields without being coveted by other spiritual plant husbands around. After thinking about it, it seems that there is only one way. It has been 1.5 months since Wang Lixia left, and it is only more than 2 months before the spiritual rice matures. Chen Mo gritted his teeth, remembering what the other party said when he left, and still went to Xiao Changhua with a brave face. According to Wang Lixia, this cultivator who entered the Tao through martial arts has broken through the third level of qi refining. If he doesn't deal with him, don't think about dealing with the 5 acres of spiritual fields. Chen Mo walked on the other side's ridge and soon attracted Xiao Zhanghua's attention. However, even though he noticed, Chen Mo's status was not enough for him to stand up and greet him. It was not until he came in front of Xiao Zhanghua that the other party opened his eyes and slowly said, "Are you looking for me?" "Greetings, Senior Xiao." Chen Mo clasped his hands together. "If you have something to say, just say it." "Will Senior Wang come back this time?" Xiao Zhanghua stood up and stared at him for a few more seconds. "What do you think?" "I'm afraid it's more likely to be bad than good. A place where the immortal gate can't handle it, a group of spiritual plant husbands. What can they do?" The other party laughed contemptuously twice. It seems that he is very disdainful of Wang Lixia's behavior that overestimates his own abilities, but it was he who brought this fatal news to the other party. Chen Mo naturally would not question the other party. The purpose of his trip was very clear. "Senior, if Senior Wang is sure that he cannot return, what should be done with her 5 acres of spiritual fields?" Xiao Zhanghua turned his head to look at the acres of land not far away. The rice ears were yellowing and had already shown signs of maturity. It was obvious that this kid in front of him, who was only at the first level of qi refining, had taken care of it on weekdays. "Do you want to harvest this crop of spiritual rice? There are still 2 months left. It would be a pity to leave them uncultivated. As far as I know, you already have 5 mu of spiritual fields, right?" When Xiao Zhanghua said this, his expression was a little special, and his tone was a little sarcastic. "Yes, I have been unable to manage 10 mu of spiritual fields these days. Fortunately, the senior gave me a few taels of spiritual sand, so I can barely hold on." Chen Mo continued, "My cultivation has completely stopped, but I think it is worth it to work hard for a year and save a sum of spiritual sand." "Hee hee." Xiao Zhanghua sneered. In his eyes, the other party was extremely naive. Now he is young and in his prime, but he actually stopped practicing for more harvests. Little did he know that practicing is like sailing against the current. This stagnation may make it difficult to make a breakthrough. Xian Peak doesn't care who the spiritual plant husband is, as long as the grain is paid. Xiao Zhanghua said this, and he was also intentionally guiding the other party. Since the kid in front of him was stupid, he was happy to get a share of the benefits. "Really?" Chen Mo's eyes lit up. "Then you see, for the remaining 2 months, Senior Wang's 5 mu of spiritual fields will still be taken care of by me. When the spiritual rice is ripe and harvested, except for the 500 genes given to Xian Peak, the remaining 500 genes will be split in half with Senior. How about it? 7/3, I want 350 genes." Xiao Zhanghua almost blurted it out, as if he had thought about it long ago. "Senior, this. Why? Do you think that without me, other spiritual plant husbands will let you finish planting the land and harvest it after knowing that Wang Lixia is dead?" Xiao Zhanghua sneered. The other party is really naive, but naivety is also good. If it weren't so naive, it wouldn't do such a thing that is not worth the loss. 150 genes. This dog thing is so cruel. He wants to take the lion's share without doing anything. Okay. 150 genes, that's 150 genes. Thank you, Senior. Chen Mo gritted his teeth and agreed. He knew that if nothing unexpected happened, these 5 acres of land would belong to the other party next year, and this year was his last chance. Chapter 17, Store Food Instead of Guns. Your home is a granary, please collect and recommend. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Wang Lixia was destined to never come back. The 30 taels of spiritual sand, 200 kilograms of spiritual rice, and 8 pieces of bigu pills became an asset left by the other party to Chen Mo. The two of them were just casual acquaintances. They got to know each other because of a transaction. Chen Mo never thought that he would become the only person who said good things about her. However, perhaps without his words, Wang Lixia should be like Yin Zheng, who died in the hands of Xiao. Even if she disappeared completely from this world, no one would care. The spiritual fields after the increase in production have significantly increased the number of rice ears. However, the spiritual yellow rice is slightly different from the rice grown in Chen Mo's ordinary fields in his previous life. In the previous life, after a group of scientists improved the rice, the plants with calf height could produce hundreds or even thousands of kilograms per mu, and the rice ears could even overwhelm the stems. The yield of the spiritual yellow rice here is much less. Although there are plants half a person's height, they usually only produce 200 kilograms of spiritual rice. The rice ears will even be covered by the stems and leaves. Therefore, even if the yield is increased by 50%, and 100 gene per mu, it will not bring much change. If you don't look carefully, you won't find that the spiritual rice in Chen Mo's field is much more than that of other spiritual plants. Chen Mo was naturally unhappy with Xiao Zhanghua's proposal. However, with his current strength, he shouldn't make enemies with the other party. There is a long way to go. Sooner or later, he will make the other party spit out these 350 gene of spiritual rice. Of course, Chen Mo also kept a watchful eye. In the first month, he only used the yield increase for his own 5 mu of spiritual fields. As for Wang Lixia's 5 mu, he still irrigated it with ordinary water, until he was sure that the other party would never come back. Xiao Changhua also meditated and practiced every day, and didn't even look at the spiritual field. Only then did he use the upgraded talent. Seeing the spiritual rice mature day by day, the whole Guchenfang city was once again filled with the joy of a good harvest. For 2 consecutive years, the spiritual rice harvest was good. These spiritual farmers who depend on the weather for their livelihood straightened their backs. Seeing that the rice had signs of peeling, Chen Mo did not wait and started to harvest the spiritual rice in Wang Lixia's field one morning. It took 2 full days. 5 acres of spiritual fields, more than 1,600 kilograms of spiritual rice were divided into 3 parts by him and piled up. 2 piles of 500 kilograms each were piled at the door of Wang Lixia's cabin. 1 pile of 600 kilograms was hidden by him in the big pit he dug last year before it got dark. These 600 kilograms were his extra income, and no one could take them away. Early in the morning of the 3rd day, before Chen Mo started harvesting his spiritual fields, he took the initiative to come to the door with 350 kilograms of spiritual rice. Xiao Changhua was still meditating and practicing like an ascetic monk. Chen Mo also noticed that the other party was able to reach the 3rd level of qi refining from the 2nd level in just a few years, and he still had some strength and talent. This energy of practicing anytime and anywhere is worth learning from him. After seeing Chen Mo coming, Xiao Changhua glanced at the 3 bags of spiritual rice on the cart and slowly said, "Pick up the spiritual rice in my field as well." Chen Mo was about to curse in his heart, but the other party continued. "Send the remaining 500 kilograms to me. I will explain when the grain collector from Xian Peak comes." As soon as these words came out, Chen Mo's anger disappeared instantly. It is still cost-effective to solve the trouble of explaining and taking care of 10 acres of land in 2 days. "Thank you, Senior." Chen Mo turned around and transported the remaining 500 kilograms over. As for the 150 kilograms that he deserved, he sent them to his home. It also took 2 days to harvest Xiao Zhanghua's 5 acres of spiritual fields, and then he had time to deal with his 2 plots of land, until the other party left. This cultivator who entered the Tao through martial arts never said hello to him, except for monitoring Chen Mo to prevent him from stealing grain. After watching him leave, Xiao Changhua looked contemptuous. As for Chen Mo, he looked down on him a little more. Now, in his mind, he was just a timid and stupid boy, not worth making friends with. He didn't know why Wang Lixia chose him at the beginning. Is it really like what was said outside? Is it because of his appearance? Chen Mo naturally didn't know that someone was criticizing him. He was exhausted after being busy for 6 consecutive days. However, no matter how tired he was, he had to harvest the spiritual rice in the field before the grain collector came, and thresh it into rice and stack it neatly. He also harvested more than 1,600 kilograms of spiritual rice from his 5 acres of land. After hiding more than 600 kilograms, there were already 1,300 kilograms of spiritual rice and 200 kilograms of spiritual rice in the cellar, adding the 400 kilograms on the surface and the legacy left to him by Wang Lixia. Chen Mo now has resources close to 230 taels of spiritual sand. This huge sum of money, according to the current progress, is enough for him to practice for several years. It can even be said that it is enough to practice to the 4th level of qi refining. Now that I think about it, the hard work of this year was not in vain. After packing up everything, Chen Mo collapsed on the wooden bed, his left leg crossed over his right leg, holding a rice ear in his mouth, in a good mood. After a year of tension, he can finally relax. Now, Chen Mo is considering whether to take 100 taels of spiritual sand to exchange for a low-grade spiritual stone. Although the spiritual energy contained in 100 taels of spiritual sand is more sufficient for cultivation, the low-grade spiritual stone is more precious, and the spiritual energy contained in it is also more refined. In other words, the cultivation speed is faster. What's more, with his current cultivation speed, a low-grade spiritual stone is enough for him to use for 1 or 2 years. Soon, Chen Mo made up his mind, I must go to the market this year to exchange for one. Just when he was dazed and immersed in the joy of harvest and the upcoming increase in strength, a chill suddenly surged up. No. Xiao. Chen Mo sat up suddenly. With his current strength of the 1st level of qi refining, if he encounters last year's Xiao, it would be a dead word. In this way, no matter how much spiritual rice he harvests, it will eventually be for others to make wedding clothes. There was a slang in his previous life, which he remembered very clearly. If you hoard grain but not guns, your home is a granary. If you hoard guns but not grain, everywhere is a granary. If you hoard guns and grain, you are the king of the mountain. Now, there is grain, what is in front of Chen Mo is the gun. Where is the gun? It is completely impossible to rely on Xiao Changhua. Now, I can only rely on myself. Chen Mo sat at the head of the bed, and his hands suddenly ignited a layer of blazing fire. This is the flame palm after mastering it, and its power should not be underestimated, but compared with Wang Lixia, it is still not a little bit behind. First, the realm gap is too big. The other party is at the 3rd level of qi refining, and he is only at the 1st level of qi refining. Second, the other party has already achieved a small success in the flame palm, while he is only proficient. No. Before you have the strength, you can't rashly go to the market. Chen Mo opened the panel and took a look. Qi Yang Ju, 92 out of 100. Flame palm, 72 out of 400. There are still 8 points of experience to break through the Qi Yang Ju. If you practice day and night, it will take more than 40 days to break through the 2nd level of qi refining. The next moment, Chen Mo made up his mind, in these 40 days, at all costs, even if the remaining 20 taels of spiritual sand are consumed, the flame palm must be broken through to a small success. Chapter 18, Excited Xiao Changhua. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Junior Sister C, the Peak Master asked you to collect grain again this year. Purple Cloud Peak, Qingbi Tan, a clear spring, sparkling, the autumn wind swept through the mountains in the distance, and the tall and majestic pines in the mist swayed and rustled in the wind, added a bit of autumn color. Xiao, dressed in white, slowly opened his eyes, and after seeing the person clearly, he glared at her angrily and said, Junior Sister Son, you are kidding me again. What? You don't want to go? Sun Shuiying came forward with interest and asked back. It will waste more than half a month, and you have to deal with those lowly farmers every day. Do you think you are angry? See, you didn't like the matter of collecting grain at all? not to mention the delay in cultivation, the most important thing is the eyes of those farmers. Instead of refutation, Sun Shuiying nodded and said, "That's right, but this is the sect's mission, so I can only endure it. But with senior brotherly here, those lowly guys shouldn't be in any trouble, right? They dare." Xiao smiled contemptuously, and a trace of disdain appeared on her beautiful face, "But, seeing those people makes me sick. I don't even want to eat spiritual food." Sun Shuiying nodded with deep concern. For a moment, she also understood the other party's difficulties. However, the peak master intends to cultivate junior sister C, allowing her to deal with various markets during the grain collection period. Even if the spiritual plant husband is not a thing, it is still an asset of Xian Peak. It's normal to suffer a little grievance. The two chatted casually, and soon, a flying sword broke through the sky from the horizon. Then a man in green with fluttering sleeves came on a sword, and he was unparalleled in both appearance and demeanor. Last year it was Li Shangxian, and this year it is still Li Shangxian. Sun Shuiying looked at her senior brother's back as he walked away, feeling even more melancholy. How nice it would be if she could be alone with senior brother Li one day. Li Shangxian, Xian Peak has the most talent, and he is also very handsome. He is less than 30 years old, but he is already at the 8th level of qi refining. His strength is so strong that no one in the entire young generation of Xian Peak can match him. The possibility of achieving a golden elixir in his lifetime is very high. But even so, this person is very well-mannered in the peak, which makes the cultivators of Xian Peak and even Qingyang sect want to become Taoist partners with him. The two of them stepped on the flying sword and descended from the top of the mountain. The strong wind blew in their faces, making their clothes rustle. About an hour later, Li Shangxian and Xiao arrived at the first market, and accompanied by the owner of the market, they began this year's grain harvest journey. This year's Xian Peak still has a bumper harvest. The face of the spiritual plant husband was still full of joy, but in Xiao's opinion, this not only did not generate any empathy, but made her feel strongly uncomfortable. A bunch of lowly farmers, if Xian Peak had not given them a few acres of spiritual fields, would they be worthy of being called cultivators? A few days passed in a flash, and Li Shangxian, who had run 7 or 8 market towns in a row, came to Guchen market without stopping. Niu Yuliang was waiting at the gate outside the market town early. When the two came on swords, his expression was obviously stunned. Looking at Li Shangxian's eyes again, he was full of surprise, but the surprise was fleeting, and then he clasped his fists and complimented. "I haven't seen you for a year, and senior brother Li has improved again. You are worthy of being the genius of Xian Peak once in 1,000 years." Li Shangxian nodded indifferently. Along the way, Niu Yuliang was not the first owner to discover his breakthrough. However, he was not interested in this and didn't care about these words at all. "No need to say more, time is running out, let's talk while walking." Li Shangxian stood on the flying sword this time and didn't even jump off. If it was last year, Niu Yuliang might still be a little dissatisfied, but this year, he didn't feel uncomfortable at all. The world of cultivators is like this, strength is respected. Niu Yuliang also took out his long sword. While leading the way, he reported the harvest of Guchen market this year. More than an hour later, the three of them came to Xiao Zhanghua's spiritual field together. Xiao Zhanghua also waited here early. Unlike the calmness and disdain when facing Chen Mo, he was extremely nervous at this moment. Soon, the three people arrived from the horizon. After landing, Li Shangxian didn't speak. As the owner of the market, Niu Yuliang pointed to the surrounding spiritual fields and said, "Where is the grain?" "Wait a minute, immortal." Xiao Zhanghua ran quickly and immediately pushed out the cart full of grain, a full cart, a full 10 bags. Niu Yuliang frowned immediately. "Is this 1,000 jin?" "Master, I have contracted 5 mu of spiritual fields, and I should pay 500 jin of grain. But the spiritual farmer named Wang next door was summoned to the mine between Xian Peak and Huangyun Peak 3 months ago." Xiao, who was originally bored, became interested instantly after hearing the word Xian, Huangyun and mine. There are indeed immortal relics in that mine, but the restrictions inside have not been broken yet. It was discovered that only one person ran out alive in more than a year. The entire Qingyang sect is looking for that person, but a long time has passed, and there is no trace of the other party. He is just a cultivator at the 3rd level of qi refining. You can see what kind of treasures are in the immortal relics. I'm thinking of applying to the market next year to buy the 5 acres of spiritual farmland, so I'm taking care of it this year to prevent Xian Peak from suffering losses. Xiao Changhua talked freely, not mentioning that this was the result of Chen Mo's hard work. He took all the credit directly. I remember you. Li Shangxian, who was standing with his hands behind his back on the long sword, suddenly spoke. Greetings, Senior Li. I remember you were only at the 2nd level of qi refining last year. That's right. Xiao Changhua was obviously excited. It was a great thing to be able to talk to Xian Peak. That year you wanted to join Qingyang sect. Your talent and qualifications were not bad, but you were too young. Li Shangxian thought, I remember you were the deputy leader of Nusha gang before. Senior, what you said is true. Xiao Zhanghua's body trembled unconsciously. He didn't expect that the immortal of Xian Peak in front of him actually remembered a small figure like him. He even remembered his identity in the mortal world clearly. You have reached the 3rd level of qi refining in 4 years. You are very good. Li Shangxian said. At this time, even Niu Yuliang on the side looked at him sideways. It was incredible that this sentence would come from the mouth of the genius of Xian Peak. Thank you for your praise, Senior. Li Shangxian stepped forward, took the 1,000 kilograms of food, and said again, 2 years later, if you can break through the 4th level of qi refining, I will accept you as my disciple. Plop. As soon as these words came out, Xiao Changhua instantly knelt on his knees, kept bowing, and said excitedly, Disciple will remember, disciple will remember. However, while he was speaking, Li Shangxian had jumped on the flying sword and disappeared in front of him. In the blink of an eye, the 3 of them were in front of Chen Mo. And they did not shy away from this spiritual plant husband who was at the 1st level of qi refining, and directly communicated. Brother, do you really want to accept that old thing as your disciple? Chapter 19, Chen Mo, Calm as 1,000. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Old thing. Chen Mo didn't need to listen carefully. The woman with the nose in the air last year came again, but who was the old thing she was talking about? Judging from the direction they were coming from, they should be coming from Xiao Changhua, junior sister C. It's just a matter of words for me. Li Shangxian smiled. 2 years to 1 rank, do you think it's easy? It's easy. It took me half a year to go from the 3rd level of qi refining to the 4th level of qi refining. Xiu opened his eyes wide, with a smug expression on his face. Hee, that's you and me. For those who have been eliminated by the sect, 2 years to 1 rank is as difficult as ascending to heaven. As he said that, Li Shangxian looked at the owner of Guchenfang Market again. If I remember correctly, owner Niu is 2 years to 1 rank. Owner Niu. Chen Mo looked at the middle-aged cultivator calmly, wearing a green and yellow linen robe and a Taoist bun on his head. He looked ordinary, but he didn't expect that this person was the owner of Guchenfang Market. Doesn't that mean that the Niu family shop is the family business of the person in front of him? Brother Li really has a good memory. I have a good memory too. Xiu suddenly pouted and muttered a little dissatisfiedly, then suddenly pointed to Chen Mo who was watching the excitement on the side and said, I remember him, he was still practicing the flame palm last year. The relationship between Xiu and Li Shangxian is very subtle. Many female cultivators in Xian Peak want to become Taoist partners with Brother Li, but these people are not in his eyes at all. As the youngest disciple of the Peak Master, Xiu's talent is not much inferior to Li Shangxian, and her throbbing heart occasionally beats a few times. However, for her, it is so urgent to catch up with Li Shangxian. The relationship between the two has become more and more elusive. Junior sister has a good memory. Li Shangxian joked. It was originally a joke, but it changed its taste when it came to Xiu. Come on, show me the flame palm again. Chen Mo did not refuse. He heard something wrong in the conversation between the two. It sounded like they were flirting. However, this was not what he cared about. He only hoped that these guys would get their food and leave quickly, so as not to delay his practice. With a bang, Chen Mo's palms instantly ignited with flames. Of course, it was still 3 points lower than the normal practice level. But how could these 3 points escape Xiu's eyes? She said angrily, use all your strength. Chen Mo frowned slightly, and the flames on his hands became brighter when he heard it. Shoot it out. The next moment, the flame palm of the mastery realm instantly left his body. Although Xiao looked down on the flame palm, she would not even look at this low-level spell, let alone practice it. However, she didn't practice it, but her vision was there. Mastery realm. As a result, Li Shangxian also became interested. Of course, he couldn't remember clearly what realm the other party was in before. After all, it was impossible for the tens of thousands of spirit plants in the entire Xian Peak to remember everything. Yes. What realm was it last year? Xiao asked again. Proficient and perfect. Chen Mo made up a lie. Now, both Li Shangxian and Niu Yuliang nodded in understanding. It is normal to become proficient and perfect in 1 year, so there is no need to worry too much. However, the instigator of the whole thing became excited. You have good talent. If you can practice the flame palm to a small success within 2 years, I will accept you as my disciple. As soon as these words came out, Niu Yuliang and Li Shangxian looked at each other sideways. Then, the once-in-a-millennium genius of Xian Peak laughed bitterly. He didn't expect that his junior sister would even compete in this aspect. Thank you, immortal. Chen Mo clasped his fists and saluted. However, he was not interested in his heart. 2 years. It doesn't take 2 years. At most, he can practice the flame palm to a small success. But will he worship the other party as his master? Although Chen Mo didn't know the cause and effect, this kind of private verbal talk was definitely not as simple as it sounded. What's more, his golden finger was in the land, and his roots were also in the land. He was determined to be the husband of this spiritual plant. Junior sister, don't make trouble. Li Shangxian said, taking all the grain piled on the ground without asking how many pounds it was. Where am I making trouble? Okay, let's go. Without giving Xiao a chance to refute, the flying sword had already taken off and disappeared from Chen Mo's sight. Junior sister C, what you said just now was a little inappropriate. Li Shangxian said. Where is it inappropriate? Is it easy to reach a new level in 2 years? It took me 3 years to go from mastery to minor success in my 9 heavens mysterious sword technique. Niu Yuliang laughed. What kind of magic is that? What kind of magic is the flame palm? Can the cultivation be compared? Then it is impossible for a lowly spiritual plant husband to cultivate to a small success in 2 years. Xiao blushed and muttered. That's true. Li Shangxian nodded. Although Sister C was indeed a bit ridiculous, it might be easy for them, but for a spiritual plant husband, it would be as difficult as ascending to heaven. Even a low-level magic like the flame palm requires a lot of resources to practice. In a good year, it is not impossible to practice magic without practicing. As for whether there will be a good harvest for 3 consecutive years, that's a bit hard to say. Besides, if he really comes to me to become my disciple, I will kill him. The word kill came out of Xiao's mouth, just like killing a chicken or a sheep, unusually calm. As for the 2 people who heard it, they didn't feel anything wrong. After sending away the 3 plague gods, Chen Mo was relieved. The more than 1,000 kilograms of grain buried underground were not discovered, so he could spend lavishly next year. Then, he came to the field, holding a piece of spiritual sand in one hand, and breathing. These days, his life is a straight line between 2 points. During the day, he kept consuming spiritual sand, practicing the Yangqi Ju, and at the same time communicating with heaven and earth. To nourish the 5 acres of spiritual fields he had contracted, in the evening, returning to the house, he practiced the flame palm over and over again. Now, Chen Mo's eyes are only on the experience points that increase little by little. Before the 2nd level of qi refining, he would not consider selling grain at all. As for the rent of Niu's shop, they monopolized the seeds, so they were not afraid that the spiritual plant husband would not come to pay the grain. They could wait for a month, and they could wait for 2 months. Chen Mo could wait, and Niu's shop could wait, but some people could not wait. On the empty forest road, the only way to the Guchenfang city, the masked robbers who made a lot of money last year are doing their old business again. Brother, it's been more than half a month, and that person hasn't come yet. Last year, they robbed more than 20 spiritual plant husbands, but only failed once. I thought that an old lady, even if she was also at the 3rd level of qi refining, would definitely be able to be taken down, but I didn't expect that the opponent's flame palm strength was so strong. I wanted to retreat and make a small profit, but the old lady didn't even give me this little face. Of course, it's also fortunate that I heard that the old lady died, so this year I must get back on that kid. Chapter 20, Second Level of Qi Refining. Flame palm is a minor accomplishment. Let's go. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Call. Chen Mo let out a breath. Naturally, he didn't know that those robbery cultivators from last year were still waiting for him, but one thing was certain: if you go to Fengshe with the strength of the first level of Qi refining, you will most likely follow in Yin Zheng's footsteps. Nearly a month had passed since the grain collection. During this period, Chen Mo had been practicing day and night, and the spiritual sand Wang Lixia left for him was also consumed very quickly. The experience of nourishing Qi is increasing in an orderly manner, almost at a rate of 1 point every 5 days. On the other hand, if you practice a purely offensive spell like Flame Palm without considering the consumption, your experience will skyrocket. It's almost 17 or 18 o'clock every day. The price is that Chen Mo sleeps only once every 3 days, and no more than 3 hours at a time. Fortunately, practicing meditation can restore some energy. If I had been so anxious in my previous life, I would have died suddenly. Of course, Chen Mo still enjoys it when it comes to liver, waving the flame palm over and over again. This extremely ordinary spell had a natural beauty in his hands. The flames on the palms became more and more intense, giving people the feeling that they could explode the air at any time. Finally, after 34 days of hard training, this only offensive spell reached the critical point of breakthrough. Seeing that flame palm was about to be completed, Chen Mo stopped. For the next few days, he sat cross-legged, motionless, as lifeless as a statue. If it weren't for the occasional spiritual energy between heaven and earth, no one would have discovered that there was a spiritual cultivator in the field who was practicing hard. Xiao Changhua would occasionally glance at him and sneer in his heart. In his opinion, Mr. Chen Lingji had wasted more than half a year taking care of the spiritual field, and his cultivation was naturally in ruins. At this time, he was just improvising. How could he really think that he was a genius like Li Shangxin? Madness. Chen Mo also noticed the occasional glances from the other party, but of course he didn't care. For him, strength is the most important thing. The day after winter begins, snowflakes actually started to fall at the foot of Xian Peak. The snowflakes disappeared instantly before they landed on Chen Mo. On this day, the spiritual sand in his hand completely turned into powder, and an indescribable force surged out from his dantian. The next moment, a line of bright yellow fonts floated before his eyes. Qi Nourishing Technique +1, upgraded. Chen Moyang dropped the sand and gravel in his hand and scattered them between the sky and the earth along with the snowflakes falling from the sky. He opened the panel. Name, Chen Mo. Occupation, Ling Jifu, unlocked. Ling Yang Officer, unlocked. Lifespan, 30/77, cultivation, second level of Qi refining. Exercise, nourishing Qi Ju, 1/200. Spell. Rain spreading technique, mastery 59/400. Fire palm, mastery 399/400. Talent, increase production, blue, breeding, green. Breeding. The joy of breaking through the second level of Qi refining has not yet dissipated. Chen Mo was instantly attracted by the changes on the panel. He stared, and the information entered his eyes instantly. Breeding, green inspire the spiritual energy of heaven and earth into the children of all things, and life is bred in them. When all things sprout, life will burst out. This method can be integrated into the Qi transfer spell, and the breeding success rate will increase by 50%. This talent requires practice Qi transfer spells, and you can integrate them only when you are proficient in them. Breeding. Is it possible that I can grow my own seeds in the future? Chen Mo didn't expect that after his breakthrough, he would awaken new professional talents still related to Ling Jifu. However, compared to the talent, increased production, breeding, did not make him too excited. First, what is the Qi transfer spell? He didn't know or how much such a spell cost. Secondly, seed trading belongs to Nyo's shop. Even if a large number of seeds are harvested, it may be difficult to sell them. Even if you set up a street stall in the market, you may be regarded as a liar by other casual cultivators and won't even take a second look. Still, better than nothing. If I have a chance, I still want to get a book on chi transfer spells. Chen Mo stood up slowly. After more than an hour, the spiritual field was covered with a thin layer of snow and frost. There was silence all around. Ruishua indicates that next year will be another good year. The Ling Zifus were cultivating and practicing, and it seemed that there was only one figure left in the pale sky and earth. Chen Mo took a deep breath and the flame in his hand burned again. The next moment, there was only a loud bang sound, and the air in front of him suddenly exploded. The heat wave eroded the snowflakes, and a void was created between the sky and the earth. So strong, that flame palm also broke through. At this moment, Chen Mo's mood became extremely calm. He had been practicing hard for several months, and it could be said that he had given up all distracting thoughts, and the day came naturally. In just over a year, Chen Mo reached the second level of chi refining. At such a speed, he would probably be at the bottom of the immortal sect. What's more, he is now 30 years old. In the eyes of Xian men, achievements are nothing more than this. My realm has broken through to the second level of chi refining, and my lifespan has also increased by 1 year. This is good news. Chen Mo shrugged and comforted himself. There is no one like Golden Finger who is so slow in cultivation. Seeing that he finally had a breakthrough, he slowly walked back to the cabin, boiled water and cooked himself a large bowl of fragrant spiritual rice, and ate it in big mouthfuls. There are no mountain delicacies or seafood, just this bowl of rice was enough to satisfy him. You know, how many Ling Jifu who are responsible for growing grain are willing to take a bite of Ling rice? After a hearty meal, Chen Mo suddenly felt comfortable all over. He pushed the bowl on the table and fell asleep. Before I fell asleep, there was only one thought left in my head. Now that I have money, I have to learn a cleaning technique. With this sleep, I slept from daytime to daytime. When a person relaxes after a high mental intensity, that is complete relaxation. At dawn, Chen Mo sat up from the bed, washed briefly, changed into a set of clean clothes, pushed his trolley, loaded 600 kilograms of grain, and set off. There are still more than 1,000 kilograms in the cellar, and it will take 2 more trips to get rid of them all. Of course, this cart of spiritual rice is going to be sold to Nyujia shop. The weather has entered winter. After the harvest, Ling Jifu had already been to Fengshe, and few people left as late as Chen Mo. They hope that the food in their hands will be replaced by bigu pills and spiritual sand as soon as possible for further practice. As for Chen Mo, he also inherited Wang Lixia's love. Without that inheritance, he would not be able to practice to the second level of chi refining with peace of mind. In this regard, Chen Mo made up his mind that when the snow melts next year, he will find a forest to build a tomb for his first friend after time travel, which can also be regarded as commemorating him. Leave a trace of I once lived. The wheels passed over it, leaving 2 ruts on the road. It starts from Ling Jifu's spiritual field and extends to Guchenfang City.